Chapter 5. "Hey Lucifer," Tom whispered quietly as the two still laid in bed. "Wake up, Lucifer." It was almost time for the two to wake up. Being that both of them had the evening off of work, Tom felt a little flirtatious and so decided to wake Lucifer's up just a little early. Supporting his head in the palm of his left hand, as he looked over Lucifer's bare chest, Tommy gently set his right hand onto his boyfriend's abdomen. Lightly brushing the hairs of Lucifer's trail with his hand, Tom slowly moved his hand towards the elastic band of his boxers. As Tommy looked into Lucifer's face, he couldn't see any sign of him waking up. He could, however, feel parts of Lucifer's lower body extremities waking up just below his right hand. Out of the corner of Tom's right eye, he could simultaneously see a rise within his boyfriend's boxers. Still, however, without as much as a twitch within Lucifer's face. Allowing his hand to glide over the surface of his plain white boxers, Tommy then lightly inserted his fingers into the fly of the shorts. Immediately Tom found Lucifer's swollen self and then carefully wrapped his fingers around the shaft. As he held on, Tommy then simultaneously leaned forward as he softly kissed the side of Lucifer's neck. With this, Lucifer finally turned his head as he suddenly realized that his dream was not a dream at all. "Good morning," Lucifer said as he lightly snuggled the side of his face to Tommy's. "Now that's the way to wake up." Over the following hour and a half, the kissing then turned into other things before the two finally walked out of their bedroom. "Hey Tommy." "Yeah?" Tom answered as he pulled a can of Folgers out of a overhead cabinet. "You remember our vacation to Traverse City, Michigan?" With the question, Lucifer held still as he had two coffee cups in his hands. "Well, of course. That's when you and I both came out of the closet to your parents." With his response, Tommy also grinned back at his lover. Lucifer then also smiled. "Have you ever wondered about those two gay guys that we met outside of that gay bar that night?" Lucifer continued. "You mean Robbie and Russell? That almost lost their lives to those two thugs?" "Yeah. I think that it would be cool to see what they're up to these days." Pausing as Lucifer set the coffee cups on the counter, he then continued, "With the severity of the situation that night they have had to at least wondered about us too. I believe that they told that female deputy that they lived on Drummond Island, Michigan. We could call the direct. They never gave us their last name." Lucifer interrupted. "We would have to find the post office." Tommy counter-interrupted. "Drummond Island is a small community. If we just searched for the number to their post office, called them and just asked about their first names, I'm sure that they would automatically assume the possibly only gay couple on the island and then accidentally slip up and say at least one of their last names." As Tommy finished his sentence, Lucifer's eyes were wide open as he realized that Tom was right. And Tom added, "The number to the directory, for that area of Michigan, would be 1-906-555-1212. You've already thought about this too, haven't you?" Lucifer asked as he listened to the dictation of the directory's number. "Yep. But I wanted you to think of it too," Tom answered as he then handed a cell phone to Lucifer. "Altel directory. What city?" "Drummond Island." Lucifer responded. "All right, go ahead. I need to know the phone number to the post office." "Okay, hold on a minute please." The operator finished. And then seconds later, an automated voice spoke. "The number is 1-906. As the number was given, Lucifer quickly jotted it down on a napkin that was on the kitchen table. "I've got the number, Tommy," Lucifer said as he watched Tom pour water into the Black & Decker coffee machine. Then, before Tommy could even respond to Lucifer's words, Lucifer began to punch in the phone number to the Drummond Island post office. "Drummond Island Postal Services. How may I help you?" a woman's voice announced. "Ah yeah." Lucifer began, "I was wondering, 'cause I can't find my phone book." Lucifer lied. "If you could quickly find me the number to Robbie and Russell." "Well, just hold on a second, hun. I'll let you ask Robbie himself." With this, Lucifer's eyes about popped right out of his head as he quickly pulled the cell phone away from his mouth. "Tommy," Lucifer gasped, "Robbie works at the..." "This is Robbie, how can I help you?" Robbie? As in the guy that's with Russell? Lucifer nearly whispered. That's me. Who's this? Do you remember two guys, about 12 years ago, that helped you two out, in Traverse City, when two thugs jumped out towards you with baseball bats? Lucifer continued to whisper. Oh yeah. Robbie answered, Lucifer and his boyfriend Tommy. Well. This is Lucifer. How are you guys doing? As Lucifer continued to speak, there was obvious excitement within him as Tom had simultaneously looked surprised. Well. What would you think about meeting up sometime? Lucifer asked after about 10 minutes of talking. Yeah, Robbie said and then paused for a moment. On the 4th of July, how about you and Tom come to Drummond Island and watch the fireworks with us, spend a few days with us, and then make plans for more time together after that? Sounds great, Lucifer said just as Tommy was pouring coffee for the two. How about you guys call us back later after you're out of work? Our phone number is 1-90824. After about 5 minutes, Lucifer disconnected the cellular call as he then looked at Tommy. Wow, Tom said loudly. That's what you call luck. Pulling out a chair, beside Lucifer, Tom then sat down. Robbie works at the post office. And then, after he gets out of work, he'll call back with Russell. Then, as he then looked at his watch, he saw that it was 8 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock in Michigan right now. I wonder why the post office is open so late at night? Tom asked. About 2.5 hours later, roughly 10:30 Central Time, Tommy's and Lucifer's cell phone began to chirp as the two were just finishing breakfast. It's them. Tom announced as he looked at the caller ID. Then, without a response from Lucifer, Tommy then answered it. Hello. Ah yeah. A voice said on the other end, is this either Tom or Lucifer? Yes it is. This is Tommy, how are you doing? Now, as Lucifer sat and listened to the one-way conversation, his memory went back to that dreadful moment 12 years earlier. With this thought, he had an odd question cross his mind. What would have happened if him and Tommy were not there to save Robbie's and Russell's lives? Just as this thought crossed his mind, Tommy then looked up at Lucifer, as he continued to talk on the phone, and then placed one hand on Lucifer's knee. Let's just thank God that we were there. Tom thought back, and then went on with his conversation with Robbie and Russell. Moments later, as Tom looked back up to Lucifer again, he spoke up just a little louder. Well. How would you two like to speak to Lucifer for a little while? Moments later, Tommy stood up, and then gently kissed Lucifer on the forehead as he also handed him the cell phone. That evening, Tommy, Lucifer, Russell, and Robbie had all gotten caught up with each other, enough to patch up the many missing holes from the past 12 years. By the end of the conversation they would find out that Russell had also gone into law enforcement. In fact, for the last 7 years he had been employed by the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department. Then, as Tom and Lucifer already knew, Robbie was working at the local post office where he had often stayed late, with another female postal worker, sorting mail. So that's why Robbie was working so late, Lucifer said as the two sat down to watch a movie. It was just another 2 weeks or so later, June 5th of 2048, when Tina was about to hatch another child. This child is gonna be another one just like Michael, Tina said as she had suddenly wrapped her arms around her abdomen. He's kicking enough to make a one-man soccer team. Are you alright, honey? William asked as he looked over to his wife. Technically speaking, their third child isn't due until the following day, however, all within just the last couple of hours the unborn child had seemingly decided that he was gonna be born today. Yeah. But this kid is determined that it's gonna be his way or the highway. Tina responded all in one breath. Along with her answer, their oldest child, Michael, had turned himself away from his coloring book. Mama. Is my new baby brother gonna be in charge? As the words came out of Michael's mouth, it looked as though the 3.5-year-old was serious when asking his question. Then, just as he questioned his mother, both of his parents simultaneously turned to look at one another. Well. Your new baby brother seems to think so, Tina said with a grin on her face. The comical moment had momentarily taken Tina's mind off of the onset of early labor. Hey Michael, would you like to feel your brother's kicking? Yeah please. the child said as he quickly jumped to his feet, leaving his crayons and coloring book behind him. Then, as he quickly got up onto his father's lap, he then laid over, onto his mother's side, as he then also rested the side of his left arm on her stomach with his hands spread out near her belly button. Instantly Mike felt a kick that had nearly caused him to retract his arm. "My new baby brother just kicked me, Mama," Michael said loudly with a look of shock in his face. Then, as he continued to lay over his mother's side with the majority of his weight still on his father's lap, he then turned his head towards his dad and repeated himself. "Daddy. My baby brother just kicked me." Through the moment of excitement, Justin, whom had fallen asleep, in a recliner, had now opened his eyes and stretched his arms. It was almost midnight when Tina had decided that it was time to go to the hospital. In fact, up until this point, Tina was starting to doubt the doctor's word that the newborn would be born on the 6th. In fact, as William, Michael, Justin, and Tina all climbed into their car, Tina wasn't 100% sure that she wasn't gonna give birth in the car on the way to the hospital. Then, just as they pulled up into the ambulance entrance, Bill jumped out of the car and ran into the building, leaving his wife and kids in the car. "My wife is in labor," William hollered as he quickly found a nurse. "She's out in the car." From that moment, things seemed to move fast as they were assisted by the hospital staff, in moving Tina into the hospital, prepping her for delivery, and then their newest child, William Hall III, coming into the world at exactly 12:22. With his arrival, of which, for the first time didn't involve Tom Russell's presence for police security, his father had felt an odd feeling from having a child carrying his own name. Or at least his full name, that is. On July 3rd, just as Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, and Angel had awoken, they were all waiting on the women of the household to awake when suddenly a passing vehicle had cast the silhouettes of both Tommy and Lucifer within the sliding glass door of the kitchen. At first Angel was startled by the sudden appearance of two people overlooking the kitchen table. All in 1 second rolling backwards, on the floor, as his chair flipped into the air in the opposite direction. The only thing that had startled Malachi or Ronnie was the sudden crash of one of the kitchen table chairs as it bounced off of the nearby wall. Then, just moments later, everyone, including Tommy, Lucifer, Malachi, Ronnie, Melinda, and Nicole were all standing over Angel as he attempted to hide himself within his own arms. "Well," Nicole said as she held a sheet over herself, "if you wanted us up right now, that's exactly what you got." Then, as Nicole knelt down to Angel's side, she continued, "Are you all right down there?" "Yeah." Angel answered with a look of embarrassment on his face, "They just startled me a bit." "A bit?" Eddie said with a look of shock still on his face. "I think that you better check your drawers." With the end of Eddie's sentence, he then leaned forward and offered Angel's hand. Then, once Angel was back to his feet, Eddie then picked up the wooden chair that laid on its side. "So, what's up, guys?" Malachi asked as he finally put his attention on Tommy and Lucifer. "Ah. We're about to go on a short vacation to Michigan. We were wondering if Angel would like to come along with us." "How long are we gonna be gone?" Angel asked as he seemed to be shaking the shock out of his system that he seemed to still be consumed by. "At least a few days." Tom spoke up. "Not any more than a couple of weeks though. I only have a 14-day vacation from the police department." "I was given a month." Lucifer spoke up. "But due to Tommy's short vacation time, we have to come back soon." "Yeah," Angel said, "I would like to go. When do we leave?" It had now appeared that Angel had fully recovered from his moment of fear. Now, fully re-energized, he was nearly jumping up and down in joy. "As soon as you get your clothes and a towel thrown into a backpack. We wanna make a quick arrival to our friend's home," Lucifer said as he looked at Angel only wearing boxers and a t-shirt. "Who's your friend?" Malachi asked as he looked at his son. "You remember that vacation to Traverse City 12 years ago? When we stayed at the Wolf Lodge Motel?" "Yeah," Malachi said as he thought back a moment, "I remember that vacation. Well, when that sheriff's deputy brought us back to the motel, she had found us walking with a couple other gay guys named Robbie and Russell. They're a little younger than us but not much. Anyway, a couple of months ago, we got back into touch with them and they invited us to vacation with them on 4th of July. They have asked that we spend a couple of weeks with them. Just as Lucifer finished answering his father's question, Angel then darted out of the kitchen and then down the hallway. That's good. Nicole announced, take a break for a while and enjoy yourselves. Pausing, as Nicole then lightly hugged her son, she then looked up to him as she still held on to him, but, I want the three of you to stay out of trouble. And remember to stay out of the sun. Eddie spoke up. Eddie had always worried that some kids would one day talk Angel into a situation that would possibly get him hurt. Angel was always the daring kind and tended to take unnecessary risks. With the secrets surrounding their vampire background, it was easier said than done when it came to making excuses for not being able to participate in certain activities. When you're a young male vampire, or as in Angel's case, a young-looking vampire, those excuses were much harder to come up with. We will. In fact, I think that I'll probably try to push our nocturnal lives onto Robbie and Russell while we're there. This would make things a lot easier for us. All within a half hour of visiting at the house, Lucifer, Tommy, and Angel were all prepared to head to the Great Lakes state of Michigan. Though it was at least 80 degrees outside, Angel, as usual, had his black leather coat on as they lifted up off of the back porch of the house. Only seconds later, as the community of Craig, Colorado looked like only a single spot far below, they were soon headed towards northern Michigan. As the three of them gotten most of the distance to Drummond Island, they had lowered themselves close to the ground as they were just over Traverse City. From that point on, the three of them flew about 300 feet off of the ground, with their backpacks on their backs. Just after they had lowered themselves to the ground, Tommy had taken lead position as he had steered the group into the eastern direction as they had flew over the Mackinac Bridge. Then, with just one more jolt of energy, they found themselves hovering over the island that was approximately 7 miles by about 15 miles long. Over here guys. Tom Holland as he lowered himself down to what looked like a gas station. At 11:30 at night, in Michigan, the Wuzz's gas station was the most lit up parking lot on the entire island. Let's land here and then we'll call Robbie and Russell for further directions. At that, the three of them sat down just outside of the parking lot beside some bushes within the dark. As Tommy got off of the cell phone, he announced that Robbie and Russell were on their way to pick them up. With it, he added that Robbie and Russell had suggested that they pick up some beer, more snack food, and then other odds and ends that may add to what was already planned. As the guys walked into the gas station, they saw that the other person that was in the store was a clerk that had, at first, greeted them with a smile, and then just stared at them for the rest of the time. They must have just come from a costume party. The clerk thought as she saw all of the extended teeth. Then, just as they approached the counter, she finally spoke. Will that be all for you guys tonight? Yes ma'am, Lucifer said as he just smiled back. It had been a while since they had to deal with new people seeing their teeth. It was hard to resist saying something about her costume party thought. Well then, that will be $35.65. The lady continued as she now began to grin as she looked down to Angel. And you, young man, stay away from that beer. Okay. Be nice Angel. Tommy thought as he nudged him on the shoulder. Yes ma'am. Angel responded as he also looked up to Tom. I don't like the taste of beer anyhow. That's a good thing hun. She finished as she, once again, smiled as a set of high beams flashed through the glass door and windows. Moments later, you could hear both doors of the vehicle slamming shut. Then, just following, the gas station door opened as two faces, just barely recognizable, stepped into the building. Tom and Lucifer. How are you guys doing? The tallest one of the two said loudly. And you must be Angel. The guy said as he looked down to the smallest person there. It's great to see you guys, Lucifer said as he shook the hand of the man. It's been a long time. Hey Mom. The shorter one said as he looked at the clerk. These are our friends that we told you about. Oh. The lady said as she seemed to be lost within thought. Nice to finally meet you guys. Now, as the smile was replaced with the look of excitement, the women walked out from behind the counter and walked up to just between Tommy and Lucifer. I know about what took place outside of Side Tracks years ago. I wanna personally thank you guys for protecting my son Russell and his boyfriend Robbie. I don't know what I would have done if anything had ever happened to them. With the end of her sentence, The now very proud woman wrapped both of her arms around Tommy and Lucifer. And Angel spoke up, causing everyone to look down. My cousins and I have a genetic birth defect that causes our teeth to protrude the way that they do. Though the statement was true, it was so far out of subject that it had momentarily left everyone speechless. Well then. Pausing as Russell's mother lightly touched the side of Angel's jawbone, she, ever so carefully, raised Angel's chin so that she could see the young man's full face. It doesn't really matter. Because all three of you guys are very handsome anyway. As she still lightly held onto Angel's chin, Angel then smiled back at her. With the eye-to-eye contact, the lady winked at him. All in about another 5 minutes or so, all 5 of the guys were walking out of the gas station and climbing into a Ford Ranger with an extended cab. It was kinda odd climbing into a small vehicle that had enough room for all of them to comfortably in. Regardless though, they were soon headed down the road, heading south. Then, after starting up from a stop sign, they continued on past a hardware store, called Sonny's, and then continued on south. A couple minutes later, they passed a bar on the left called Chuck's Place. Then, just a little further, on the right-hand side of the road, they had slowed down, just beyond the top of a slight hill, and pulled into a driveway. It was about 10:30, possibly closer to 11 o'clock when they stepped out of the truck. It was dark outside except for the overhead stars and moon. Most of the lights, inside the house were on. On the opposite side of the driveway there was a much smaller cabin. There weren't lights on in it, but it was close enough, to the driveway, that it was obviously part of the same property. Does your mom live here too? Tom asked just as they stepped onto a porch on the front of the house. No. Russell answered. She lives at the Drummond Island apartments down by our post office. Robbie and I live here alone. This was a little shocking to Tom considering that the house was a 2-story house, a cabin next to it, a garage, on the opposite side of the yard, beside the road that led them to the house, and it looked as though, before the headlights were turned off, that there was a barn out back. Then, just as they stepped into the house, Russell continued. We rent out the cabin, that's outside, to make some money on the side. Then, when we have friends over to visit, like you guys, we have plenty of space for you within our main house. As everyone stepped into the kitchen, of which was just into the right when you walk into the door, everyone sat down to the table. So, Robbie spoke up. Would any of you guys like a beer? With the question, Robbie had also held out a can to Lucifer. Sure, Lucifer said as he took the cold can, I think that all of us could use one. Then, as Lucifer looked at his cousin, he continued. And, believe it or not, Angel too is legally old enough to drink. As Lucifer said this, Angel was simultaneously climbing up onto Tom's lap. Okay. Sure, Robbie said with disbelief in his voice, I guess it doesn't really matter anyhow. Then, with his response, he handed a cold beer to Angel as well. Thank you, Angel said as he had finally gotten himself comfortable on Tom's lap. Then, without skipping a beat, Angel then also reached into his rear pocket and pulled out his wallet. As he then opened it, he showed Robbie his driver's license. Looking at Angel's ID, of which he wasn't really concerned about anyway, he noticed that, according to the laminated card, that Angel was in fact 39? Looking back at Angel, Robbie then looked at the ID again. Wow. I wouldn't have never guessed you to be more than 9 or 10 years old. As Robbie said this, the look on Russell's face was one of shock as well. So, Russell spoke up, how have you guys been doing since you rescued us? With the question, Russell had began to gaze at Robbie as the two were obviously deep in love with one another. I know that you too. Momentarily looking at Tommy, chose law enforcement for work. Yeah, Tom said as he immediately picked up on the subject, law enforcement seems to run pretty deep within our family. Lucifer's mother and grandmother, and then now, myself. It's only local police, rather than county, so I'm sure that your job keeps you busier than mine keeps me. Don't count on it, Russell continued as he set down his can of beer that already sounded near empty. My personal jurisdiction only covers Drummond Island. Sometimes I take care of some of the other nearby islands, but for the most part, Drummond Island is it. Wow. That sounds basic. Pausing mid-sentence, Tommy then chugged down the remaining fluids within his can just as Robbie stood up and handed out another can to everyone. Even to those that haven't finished what they had. Thanks, Robbie. You're welcome, Tommy. So, I take it then that a lot of your patrol is alcohol-related? Tom continued. Yeah. To say the least. And then some domestic issues on the side. With that said, Robbie had made a look on his face that showed that the domestic issues may be extreme. Well, you know. Add alcohol to anything for too long of a period of time, something's bound to happen. Enclose 600 to 1,000 people within an area of 7 miles by 15 miles, tension rises. And then sometimes that population can jump up to 1,500 to 2,000 during the summer. With the estimate given, Tommy's and Lucifer's eyes opened wide. Most of my work is set between road patrol and welfare checks, Tom said as he had repositioned Angel on his lap, some domestic on the side but not a lot. Well. Robbie spoke up as he had sat down once again between Lucifer and Russell. I can personally testify to the fact that both of you two are up to serving and protecting the innocent. Pausing a moment, as he looked at Lucifer, so, did you guys get into any trouble that night? Not exactly trouble, Lucifer said as he looked back across the table to Tom. That was, however, the night and event that led to Tommy and I coming out of the closet. How's that? Russell asked. With his question, he kinda tilted his head to the side as curiosity rose within him. With the question though, he had an ongoing smile. Because that female deputy had mentioned to Lucifer's parents that she had watched us walk away from the side tracks bar, Tom said as he simultaneously finished off his second can of beer. All 5 of the guys had stayed up pretty late. Then, after all of the beer was gone, of which was not a normal passion for Lucifer, Tom or Angel, all of the guys headed off to bed. It wasn't until about 2:30 the following morning that Angel had awoken to the sound of dishes rattling downstairs. With the clatter came the smell of eggs and bacon as well. With that, coffee had also filled the senses. Looking out the window, Angel could see an overcast that they were hoping for the holiday. Sitting up, with his legs off to the side of the mattress, Angel then looked down to the hardwood floor, that was about a foot's distance beyond the length of his legs and feet. This bed's a little higher off of the floor than our own at home. He thought to himself. Then, rather than just allowing himself to slide off of the edge of the mattress, like he would at home, he levitated himself softly into the air and then carefully lowered himself to the ground. Upon landing, he then left the room. Just outside the bedroom door, Angel saw a flight of stairs just ahead of himself. To the right was another room, with the door partially open. Turning towards that door, Angel quietly looked into the room to find Tom and Lucifer both awake. They were covered up to the waist, with a sheet as they were also holding onto one another kissing. This was the first time that Angel had ever stumbled across Tom and Lucifer at an intimate moment. With an exception to times in the past that they were joking anyway. For a moment, without making any noise, Angel continued to watch as the two continued to embrace one another. Moments later, the sheet that they were covered up with began to find its way towards the foot of the bed, revealing the fact that Tom and Lucifer were both naked. With this, Angel's curiosity increased as he now watched intently as his family members pulled each other close. Tom was on the side of the bed closer to Angel, so the majority of what Angel saw was Tommy's entire backside and most of Lucifer's front side that wasn't hidden behind Tom. As Angel continued to watch, he noticed that certain parts of his own body began to swell as he saw the actions between Tommy and Lucifer go from kissing to other sexual events that Angel had never witnessed in person. Moments later, however, Angel then turned and walked away from the door as he headed for the stairs. LTS time for me to find a girl so that I can get some action around here. Angel thought to himself. Soon, everyone, including Tom and Lucifer, were sitting around the table, with Robbie and Russell, as everyone ate a late brunch. Through the meal, Angel couldn't help but to think about what he had just witnessed upstairs. As he continued to think about it, however, he then realized that he was the only one, in that house, that was straight. As everyone continued to eat, a car had suddenly pulled in, behind Robbie's and Russell's truck. Moments later, Russell's mother climbed out of the front seat, holding a paper grocery bag, as she then shut the door with her foot. Your mom goes grocery shopping for you guys? Tom asked. Possible. Russell answered. Most likely, however, she probably went yard zalling. She's always finding something that she thinks that we might be able to use. What's up with that? Angel asked as he pointed to the counter where an old vodka bottle stood in the corner. In black writing, on a rolled-up piece of paper in the bottle, read Stan and Mary. 1999. Oh, just an old bottle that we found in the house when we bought the property years ago, Robbie said. We just kept it because it symbolized the depth of love between two people. Just as Robbie finished his explanation, Russell's mother then pushed open the kitchen door. Russell's mom spent most of the remainder of that day there at the house visiting. Then, as it got close to sundown, they all went to watch the 4th of July fireworks near the Drummond Island Elementary School. From there, Russell's mom went her own way while Robbie, Russell, Tom, Lucifer, and Angel went swimming at a campground there on the island. 6 days later, after an unforgettable visit filled with joy and excitement for Tommy, Angel, and Lucifer, they then headed home to Colorado with plans to always stay in contact with their friends. Roughly 14 months later, on the 15th of September 2049, it was now time for Micah's first day of kindergarten. Though Micah lived with his parents in Ridgeview, for some unknown reason, that didn't really matter to Macaulay or Lovisa anyhow, Angel persisted that he wanted to go with them to the Sunset Elementary School for Micah's first day. Then, as they climbed out of Macaulay's and Lovisa's car at the school, Angel seemed to be more interested in watching the other students, as they walked up to the school, with their parents. As Micah held onto his parents' hand, his dad's in one and then his mom's in the other, Angel quietly walked behind them into the school and then into the kindergarten classroom. Once in the room, for the first time for Macaulay and Lovisa as parents, Angel walked around the classroom as he walked up close to each of the young children. Some of which played out in the hallway, away from their parents, and then some, just like Micah, that kept close to their parents. Angel wasn't just looking at the children's faces, he was looking at their hands specifically as he searched for something. Then, just as Angel had found what it was that he was looking for, on the back of a kid's left hand, as the boy attempted to introduce himself to Micah, Angel then walked up to the kid's side as he stared at the small hand. Reaching out towards the hand, with his own right hand, Angel lightly grasped the hand that had just tapped on Micah's shoulder. Simultaneously, as Micah had turned his head towards his peer, Micah's new classmate had turned to face the person holding onto his own hand. "Hi," Micah said with a smile as he looked at a student standing beside him. Then Micah looked up to Angel's face. "It's all right, Angel." Without looking at Micah, Angel just looked into the face of the kid that he was still holding on to. "Is your name Michael Dale Hall?" Angel asked. "Yes," the young boy said as he stared back with a smile on his face. "What's your name?" "I'm Angel." Pausing, as he looked at the back of the kid's hand, he looked at the scar on the back of Michael's hand that had a hard ridge through it. The scar stretched from just behind the pinky finger, all the way across towards the boy's thumb. Aside from Michael's white skin, the hardness of the scar was a tint of purple. This purple-hardened ridge made the scar stand out. "I'd like to be friends with you, Michael." "Okay," the kid said as he continued to look up to Angel, "you can be friends with me." Then, as Michael looked back towards Micah, of whom he had tried to visit when Angel suddenly took a hold of his hand, he continued. "What's your name?" "I'm Micah. My grandparents and Angel live just across the street from ya." Just as the words left Micah's mouth, Angel was suddenly shocked by the revelation that his new friend had lived so close to him for the last 57 months and not even realized it. This shock was obvious in Angel's face. "Hello." A girl's voice suddenly spoke up, causing Micah, Michael, and Angel to look towards the opposite side of Micah. "My name is Alice, what's your guy's name?" the girl asked. This girl had skin that was about as dark as Angel's and had hair that hung all the way down to her waist. Though she was much shorter than Micah or Michael, it was obvious that she too was registering for kindergarten as well. In response to Alice's question, Micah placed his attention on her as he then turned his back on both Angel and Mike. "So Michael," Angel said as he now had the nearly 5-year-old's attention, "what's happened to your hand?" "I don't know," Michael said as he rotated his left hand showing it to Angel. "It happened when I was a baby." From that point, Michael and Angel continued to talk as all of the parents continued to assist their children with their first day of kindergarten. Then, just before everyone was ready to head home, a friendship was established between Angel and Mike. On top of this, Angel made plans to visit Michael later at his home. "I don't think that my parents would have a problem with you coming over to our house." Then, only about 20 minutes after everyone had reached the top of Finley Lane, Angel did in fact find his way over to the front porch of the Hall's home. "Oh hi Angel," Tina said as she opened the front door. "It's about time that you've come over to visit." "I enjoyed my time with Michael earlier at the school," Angel said as he stepped into the kitchen. "Would it be okay if I spent some time with him?" "Well of course it is," Tina gasped, "come on in." Hess in the living room watching television, Tina continued as she then led Angel through the kitchen and into the living room, in the far back of the house, where a sliding glass door opened up to their backyard. "Hi Angel," Michael said as he stood up from the floor. Mike was obviously very excited having a friend over to visit him. This had never happened before. "What do you wanna do? Can you go outside?" Angel asked while Tina was still there to answer the question. Knowing that Angel wanted this friendship to last, he knew that he would have to gain the trust of Mike's parents along the way. "It's alright if you guys go out but you need to stay off of the road," Tina said as she looked down to her oldest son. While saying this, Tina was also picking up Michael's youngest brother, Billy, and placing him over her shoulder. "Ma'am." Angel spoke up. "Can we go over to the high school's yard, that's across the street from my house? We'll only cross 9th Street and then Finley Lane, in front of the church." Thinking about it for a moment, as Tina then walked back into the kitchen and looked out to Finley Lane to see what kind of traffic there was, she then responded, "Yeah. Just make sure that you guys stay together." Then, as both Angel and Mike headed for the door immediately, Tina patted her son on the shoulder. "Be careful." "We will be." Angel spoke for Mike. "In fact, anytime that you look out the window, I promise that you'll be able to see us there either in the grass or on the tennis court." "Well, thank you Angel. That would make me feel a lot better." Then, as Tina opened the door, she then watched the boys walk up the sidewalk, to 9th Street, cross the road, and then once again in front of the church. "So, what do you like to do, Michael?" Angel asked as they walked into the grass. The sun had been hidden behind the clouds all day. Yet, there was also a warm breeze that came out of the south. "I don't know." Mike answered. "What do you want to do?" With his question, Angel knew of a lot of things that he wanted to do. Most of these things, however, would have to wait until Angel had gained a lot of trust from Mike's parents, not just a little bit of trust needed to get out the front door of the house. "How about tag? Or we could play catch with a baseball and gloves," Angel suggested. Instantly, when Angel mentioned baseball, a glow seemed to come over Michael's face. "My roommate, Eddie, is about to bring the ball and gloves over for us." "Okay." Seconds later, he thought clearly. "Eddie, would you please get a baseball and gloves for me and a friend of mine?" We're in front of the house almost instantly. Both Michael and Angel saw the front door of the house open up as Eddie then stuck his head out the door. "Hold on a minute Angel." Eddie responded, "I've gotta go get them out of the garage." "What's he doing?" Mike asked as he looked at Angel. "He was just looking to make sure that we were still out here," Angel said as he lightly took a hold onto Mike by the sides. The touch had caused Mike to quickly shrug his arms as it tickled him. As Angel still held onto Mike, he then picked Mike up off of the ground. "Gee. You're strong Angel." Michael shrieked loudly as he giggled as well. Mike felt that Angel was at least a couple of years older than himself. This thought was based off of the fact that Angel was a good foot taller than himself. Then, as Angel still held the boy off of the ground, he made a slow-motion sort of dive into the tall unmowed grass, as they wrestled together. While they both laid in the grass, Angel tickled Michael, causing him to continue to laugh loudly and kick his feet on the ground. After about 5 minutes, Eddie had emerged from the gate of the fenced-in backyard, and found Angel playing in the grass, with the boy that he knew to live kitty corner from them, as he was tickling him very roughly. "Hey guys." Eddie spoke, "Here are the gloves and ball. You guys be careful now." As he approached the two playing in the tall grass, Michael paused in his play as the man, that he had only seen from a distance, up until this moment, was standing over them. "You be careful, Angel. He's a lot smaller than you." "I will," Angel answered as him and Michael still laid on one another, "and thank you, Eddie." "You're welcome," Eddie said as he knelt down towards the boys. Then, as he reached out towards Michael, he continued, "What's your name?" "Michael." As he still remained froze within his play, he now smiled at the tall man. "I live across the street from you, next door to the Alberts." "And your mom's name is Tina?" Eddie questioned, and then stood back up as Michael acknowledged that Tina was in fact his mother. "Okay guys," Eddie said as he began to walk back towards the house, "holler if you need anything." Both Michael and Angel played up until about 1 o'clock when Tina and Bill both pulled up in their little blue minivan. As they got out of the van, they had a backpack with them that they began to open as they were standing beside Angel and Michael. "Hey guys," Bill said, "it's time to take a break and eat something. We've got sandwiches and soda for both of you." As William continued to speak, he pulled items out of the backpack, one thing after another, including some granola bars for a dessert. "Thank you, sir," Angel said as him and Michael both sat down together beside Tina, whom was kneeling down in the grass dividing the items that Bill was pulling out of the bag. "I really appreciate it." "You're welcome." "Angel, right?" Bill asked. "Yes, sir. I live right there." As Angel said this, he pointed at the yellow house just across the street. "You can call me Bill, and my wife Tina." "All right, Angel," Bill said as he gently set a hand on top of both Angel's and Michael's heads. "Also, Angel, you're welcome to come play with Michael anytime." "Okay." With this said, both of the boys sat down and ate as Tina then got Justin and Billy out of the van to play in the grass. Just a couple of weeks later, as Malachi and Ronnie were at Safeway, they had run into a face that they had recognized at the checkout line. Though neither of the guys had said anything to the man, both Ron and Malachi looked at each other as they wondered where they knew him from. This thought was cut short, however, as they both noticed, out of the corner of their eye, that their own mother had just entered the grocery store. Before they had a chance to holler out to her, the man in front of them, that they both recognized, had suddenly turned his head towards their mother also. Then, under his breath, but loud enough that both Malachi and Ronnie heard it, he said something that would bring this evening to an end. "Stupid bitch. Fucked up the paint job on my car and got away with it." Instantly, both Ronnie and Malachi knew who the guy was. Remaining quiet, the guys followed the man out the front door of the store after he was finished with the checkout line. It was dark outside as 11:30 had just passed. Then within a darkened area of the parking lot, Malachi then called out his name. "Hey, Mr. Plowman." Instantly the guy turned to find both of Corina's kids walking towards him. "We need to have a talk with you." "Maybe later, guys," Tony responded as Corina's kids were approaching quick. "I've gotta get going." Before the former Craig officer got the end of his sentence out of his mouth, Malachi had caught up with him and placed a hand on the car door that the guy was just about to open. "Come on now. I said that Suddenly, Mr. Plowman was pushed from behind, projecting him towards Malachi, who had then caught him and immediately turned him to face Ronnie. "Leave me alone." "What the hell did you just say about our mother?" Ron asked as he now stood face to face with Tony. Ron could see instant fear in the guy's face. "I didn't mean it." As Tony spoke, he attempted to guard his face with his arms. Yet found that Malachi had his arms restrained. "Let go of me." The look in the guy's face now switched to a combination of both fear and anger. "Leave me alone," he screamed as he looked into Ronnie's face. "Let's have some fun with him, Malachi," Ron said in a quiet tone of voice. "What? What do ya?" In mid-sentence, Tony had found himself to be pulled up off of his feet, and headed straight up into the dark skies up above. In shock, Tony was instantly lost for words. Closing his eyes just for a moment, he then opened them again to see Ronnie staring back into his eyes. "You will never disrespect our mother again," Ron said. "In fact, you will never disrespect anyone again." With Ronnie's words, Tony Plowman felt Malachi's restraint seem to tighten. With both of his arms pulled behind him like as if he was about to be arrested, his hands were being forced upward, towards his own head, causing extreme pain to his upper arms and shoulders. "Please guys. This hurts so much. I'm sorry." Suddenly, Ronnie reached out and took a hold of Tony's left collarbone, within his fingers, and pulled on it towards himself, causing Tony to stop talking as pain took his breath away. Instead, Tony began to openly cry as he then began to scream in such a low pitch, that it began to sound like more of a growl. As Ron kept pulling, he looked into the man's face as he could see the increase of pain come in waves. Then suddenly, the collarbone snapped within his fingers, causing Tony to faint within Malachi's arms. Now, as the man's body laid limp, Malachi then sunk his canines into the left side of Tony's neck. With this, Ronnie then rested himself against the front of Mr. Plowman's body as he sunk his teeth into the right side of Tony's neck. As the boys harvested, they then wrapped their arms around one another, with Tony's body in between them, like a sandwich, for at least 10 minutes before the flow of blood came to a stop at about the same time for both of them. Then, as Malachi and Ronnie found themselves holding onto the lifeless body, they each took one of Tony's hands, up into their own, as they began to glide into the western direction. If they were seen by someone else, it would have been guessed that there were 3 people flying together. Picking up speed, until the lights down below looked like streaks of light, they kept picking up more speed until they no longer saw any light at all below. Up ahead, however, they had seen what looked like the sun was rising, out of the west, rather than the setting that northern Colorado had seen just a few hours ago. With a handful of clouds that stood between the boys and the sun, they found themselves over the ocean, just beyond Washington state. Letting go of the lifeless body between them, Ronnie and Malachi watched the body plummet back to earth as they remained in one place looking at the sun setting. After returning back to Craig, both Malachi and Ron sat down onto the back porch of the house. With their landing, Nicole, Belinda, Eddie, and Angel were sitting in the kitchen and looking out towards them. "I thought that you guys were gonna just walk down to the store," Nicole said as she stood to unlock the sliding glass door. "We were," Ron said. "But then we had to take out some trash." "Some trash?" Belinda repeated. "Anyone that we know?" As the girls looked at both of the guys standing before them, a little run of blood remained on one of Ronnie's canines, showing the meaning or trash. "Yeah. But no one important," Malachi answered for his little brother. Both of the girls knew that this meant to not press for answers any further. Angel, who hadn't even faced Ronnie or Malachi, continued to eat his late breakfast, just raised his eyebrow a bit at Malachi's response. He knew that most likely, he would either read about it in the paper, see it on the news, or hear about it on the radio. Most likely, the news would have to do with a missing person. With this knowledge, however, it was also known that it would have happened for a good reason. Pushing his chair out from the table, Angel decided that it was time for him to harvest. Oddly though, he found himself wanting, even more than harvesting, to spend time with his new friend Michael. With the time nearing midnight, however, Angel doubted that his 57-month-old friend would even be awake. "I'm gonna go out for a while," Angel announced. Then, just moments later, after throwing on his coat, the front door of the house could be heard latching. Walking out of the yard, and into the street, Angel then walked across the road, over a median that separated Finley Lane into 2 halves, and then onto the sidewalk that led to Michael's house. It was dark outside with an overcast that seemed to hide the moon and the stars. Though it was the last day of September, it wasn't really that cold out yet, even though Angel did choose to fasten the front of his black leather coat. Approaching the front of his friend's house, he couldn't help but to wonder if just maybe Mike could be awake. But which window is to his bedroom? Angel wondered. Walking into the grass, Angel noted that all of the house lights were off. Although, he continued to himself, parents always have one of those night lights for their children. With this thought, Angel levitated himself up off of the ground, and then began to carefully look into the windows from a distance of about 10 to 15 feet. Going from one window to the next, Angel found 2 bedrooms with night lights on. With this finding he had assumed that just maybe, Michael had a separate room from his brothers. With this thought in mind, Angel then hovered close to the nearest window of the 2 and peered in. Inside, he saw a baby crib and a twin bed with Justin partially covered on it. Without seeing another bed within that room, Angel then decided to move on to the next room that had a light within it. The first thing that Angel noticed when he approached the next bedroom is that the window was partially open. Along with this finding, he had also found Michael sleeping on the only bed in the room. Looking in, through the open portion of the bedroom window, Angel quickly found that there wasn't a screen in place, and also, the door to the room seemed to be latched. Carefully placing his hands on the underside of the window, Angel tried very softly to pull up on the window, hoping that maybe he could get it up higher than the 3 to 4 inches that it already was. Immediately the portion of window did begin to slide, and did so without making any noise. Then, once it was up enough for Angel to comfortably get in, he then carefully stepped into the bedroom, and then, to avoid creaking any floorboards, he levitated up off of the carpet, and then hovered the additional 10 feet to the side of Michael's bed. Then, once he was close to Mike's sleeping body, Angel lightly sat back down to the floor. Now, as Angel stared at the side of his friend's head, that the nightlight illuminated just enough to show all of his facial features, Angel kneeled beside the bed and began to wish that he could infect his friend. He wished so much for Michael to be able to spend time with him late at night out on the town. Then, as Angel moved his face close to Mike's face, he felt the slight puffs of air exiting through his friend's nose. Then, as Angel moved his face towards Mike's neck, he began to breathe in Michael's pheromones. Pheromones that smelled sweet and caused Angel to dare himself to take a bite out of his friend's neck. Just a small one. Angel wished. Then, pushing that dare just a little further, Angel then licked the warm skin. I can't risk losing his parents' trust. Angel continued to think as he kept physical contact between the front of his own face and Mike's neck. Then carefully, again, he took another long swipe, with his tongue, across the side of his friend's neck. This time, however, he sealed his lips, onto the side of Michael's neck, as he was very careful to not touch Mike with his canines. Maybe I could suck the blood through the skin, like a hickey, without infecting him. The more that Angel attempted to find a way, the more that his own body seemed to pulsate as he became more and more excited with the moment. Pulling his face away from Michael abruptly, Angel knew that he had to stop before he ruined the good situation that he already had going for himself involving Mike. Then, after giving his friend a slight hug with just one arm, Angel then stood and then, once again, hovered towards the window. As he exited the window, he then pulled the window back down to the 3 to 4 inches that it was at.
2 children died during entry into Mars's atmosphere. Olympus City police and Martian doctors are concluding that an accident, that took place on October 3, that had killed 2 young children, was not the pilot's fault. The pilot had no knowledge that anyone born outside of a gravity field, after spending the later half or more of their prenatal period of life, without gravity, would die, almost instantly, once introduced to gravity. Andy Dial, 7, and Samantha Dial, 9, whom have never lived on or visited any planet, just tragically learned that they never will after their 52-month-old twin brothers passed away while entering Mars' atmosphere. There are physical and chemical changes, within those that are primarily prenatally developed without any gravity. Dr. Ian Patient explained, this was discovered in the early 2003 by doctors on planet Earth. The death of these 2 innocent lives could have been prevented. During the investigation, Olympus City Police Chief, Jeff Hembolt, looked at the history of the Russian pilot and his shuttle, the Nunup. It was Hembolt's finding that the pilot nor his shuttle were at fault. He just simply didn't know. And, the 29 years that we've been traveling to Mars, from Earth, doesn't necessarily qualify mankind as experts in space travel, much less as space experts. Therefore, I see no reason to place blame onto anyone. NASA, out of Houston, Texas, Earth, plans to reinvestigate the effects of anti-gravity to the fetus. The hopes of this investigation is that perhaps one day other space residents, such as Andy Dial and his sister, Samantha Dial, would be able to visit Mars or, perhaps, planet Earth.
Reading the newspaper article twice, Malachi couldn't believe how our technology had even placed man on the Mars planet. It had seemed like it was only yesterday that President George W. Bush had made the statement that the U.S. would make a mission to Mars. Now, that statement was 45 years old. With this thought, Malachi then looked back to the age of the surviving children. 7 and 9 years old. Why would their parents have kept them off of Mars or Earth's surface for so long? Even though these children were not Malachi's, it bothered him that any child would lose their life by the bad decision of an adult. It didn't make any sense to Malachi. It was well known that the time of travel, from Earth to Mars, had dwindled down to about 2 months. That was plenty amount of time to have had those kids, prior to the later half of pregnancy, landed onto a planet, with a gravity force. It wasn't just this particular incident, Malachi had also felt a personal level of anger, or at times, pain deep within himself when watching programs about St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Anything that made mention to children dying, and in his own opinion, needlessly. Though Malachi was no doctor, and he'd be the first so say so, he couldn't believe that today's technology hadn't conquered cancer. Over the years, since Malachi and Ronnie were still young children, and still living at the Ridgeview Apartments, their parents had donated money every month to the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. On top of that, they had also periodically made large donations to the Ronald McDonald's House for Children as well. Now, space travel? Once again, Malachi found himself rereading the article from the very start. Ever since shortly after Lucifer was born, it had gotten to be routine, for Malachi, to awaken before everyone else. This was the norm at the family house, there on Finley Lane, and at the apartments. Then, at these early waking up hours, approximately an hour prior to sundown, Malachi would take an advantage of the peace and quiet as he would fry himself up a steak, with plenty of ale sauce. On the side, he would make toast and fresh coffee. Then, just as he had today, when he found this saddening newspaper article, he would sit down and read the paper. Just as he folded up the newspaper, Malachi was about to enjoy the last couple sips of his coffee when suddenly he heard a knock on the front door of the house. Pushing out his chair from the table, Malachi looked at his wristwatch as he had also made sure that the front of his bathrobe was tied shut, then he headed down the stairs leading towards the door. Moments later, he found himself looking down to his little neighbor, kitty corner from them, Mike Hall. "Hello Michael. What got you up and moving at this time?" he asked with a smile. "I was wondering," the young child started, "if it would be okay for Angel to come play outside?" "Well, right now Angel's not. I'm up," Angel's voice suddenly said from the top of the steps. Instantly, Malachi looked up the stairs where Angel was only wearing boxers as he stared back down the steps. "Come on in Michael." With this, Malachi opened the door all the way, and then stepped to the side as the young child walked into the house. "Let me take your coat for ya," Malachi said as he then grasped lightly onto the collar of the kid's jacket. Immediately Michael then pulled his arms out of the coat and then headed up the stairs. Quicker than Malachi could hang the coat up, Mike was standing beside Angel, whom had obviously just gotten out of bed. "Did you just go to bed?" Michael asked as he stared back at Angel's nearly naked body. "Actually," Angel responded, "I just woke up." With his answer, a look of confusion instantly covered Mike's face. "I'll explain it to you sometime, Michael. Our sleep schedule is a little different from most people's. Can you come over to my house and spend the night?" Mike asked as he looked up to his friend. Standing beside one another, Angel was only a single foot taller, at 5'2", than his friend. With this, however, Angel weighed 95 pounds while Michael weighed 47 pounds. "Is it alright with your mom and dad?" Angel asked as he stared back to his friend. "Yep," the kid said with excitement in his voice. "In fact, my mom is standing on our front porch to watch for cars as we cross the street." As Malachi continued to stand next to the door, he had opened the door again, just enough to look out and see Tina looking towards their house. "Great," Angel said. "Let me go throw some clothes on real quick. And then we'll head on over." As Malachi watched Angel dart back down the hallway, as he had also abandoned his friend at the top of the stairs, he headed back up the steps. Malachi couldn't help but to wonder why Angel had taken a kindergartner under his wing. He knew that both Angel and Michael were obviously happy, and it was also obvious that Mike's parents didn't seem to have a problem with it either. With this thought, Malachi decided to not bring it up. Then, moments later, Angel walked back into the kitchen fully dressed. As Malachi turned around, Angel was approaching him with his arms extended above his head. "You ready to head over there?" Malachi asked. "Yep," Angel said as he wrapped his arms around Malachi for a hug. "I'll see you guys later." This wasn't normal, however. Malachi went along with Angel as he wrapped his arms around him too. "I love you, Malachi." With his chin over Angel's shoulder, Malachi was now in near shock to the show that Angel was putting on for his young friend. Seconds later though, he was back at the bottom of the stairs watching Angel and Mike head across the street. At this time, the sun was now completely below the horizon on the back side of their house. "Well, hello Angel," Tina said as the two boys found their way back across the street. "How are you doing?" With her words, Tina had simultaneously reached out towards Angel as she raked her fingers through his black hair. "I'm doing good," Angel answered as he looked up to her and smiled. "Thank you for letting me spend the night." "You're welcome, honey," Tina responded as she then used the same hand that she had used to rub his head, to then trace his jawline from his ear. This will be Michael's first time having a friend spend the night over. "And, so long as you two are quiet, so that Bill can sleep, for work, you guys can plan to do this more often. Okay?" "Yes ma'am," Angel said as he continued to smile. "We'll be real quiet." Then, with the end of his sentence, he followed Mike into the house, through the kitchen, around the corner, into the living room, and then up the stairs. Moments later, Angel was following Michael into his bedroom where Mike quickly and quietly latched the door behind them. Taking a look at his surrounding, Angel realized that his friend had Power Ranger figures laying all around the bedroom. Angel had never played with Power Ranger figures, and so he knew that he had an interesting evening ahead of him. And that, he did. And then about 2 o'clock in the morning, Angel had found that Michael was getting very tired as he seemed to have been needing a pair of toothpicks to keep his eyes open. "You can sleep up here too," Mike said as Angel had made himself a makeshift pillow, with his coat, on the floor. "There's plenty of room for both of us. You can sleep by the wall." As Michael continued to talk, he pointed towards the inside edge of the mattress, "And I'll sleep on the outside." "You know Michael," Angel said as he watched his friend put on his pajamas. "Maybe tomorrow, your mom might let us go up to the Sandrocks." "You mean those mountains behind the church, at the top of Finley Lane?" Mike asked as he then also laid down on the mattress and propped his head up in his hand as he rested on his elbow. "Yeah." Now, as Angel spoke, he undressed himself down to his boxers as he too prepared for bed. "It's cool to climb on them, and, you can see the whole town." "That sounds cool," Mike said. "It would be the coolest thing in the world to be able to fly like a bird." As Michael was saying this, Angel was simultaneously climbing over him and then had paused halfway, straddled over Mike, as the word fly came out of his mouth. Lightly sitting down on his friend, as Michael laid on his back facing him, Angel looked directly into his eyes. "What would you do if someone was able to make you fly, Michael?" "What do you mean?" Mike asked as his eyelids seemed to have been fighting against the conversation. "I mean, what if you were able to fly like a bird? What if you were able to fly faster than a jet? Would you like to do it?" "Yeah." With his response to Angel's question, Michael had also smiled at Angel as well as the image, of flying like a bird, had painted itself into his mind. And, Angel continued to add to that image. What if it was possible to be stronger than anyone else in the world? Be faster than anyone else? With each additional item, that smile on Michael's face seemed to continue to grow even bigger. With it, however, Mike's eyes were weighing shut tighter and tighter with each word. Then, as Angel was still straddling Mike's waist facing him, he then forced his hands up Michael's pajama shirt, placing his hands on Mike's warm belly, and, "Live forever." "Yeah. That would be cool." With this, Michael never even opened his eyes as Angel had hoped that his cold hands, on his belly, would have. Then, right before his eyes, and as he still sat on his friend, he watched his friend fall to sleep with that smile left in place. Along with this, Angel slowly, and carefully, laid down beside Michael, on the inside edge of the mattress. Rather than laying down against the wall, Angel laid close to his friend, as he positioned his mouth close to Mike's ear. "One day soon, my friend, this dream will come true. And then you and I will be the most powerful people in the world. Much greater than my grandfather ever dreamed of being." While Angel spoke, he had been ignoring a hunger deep within himself. He was determined that nothing in this world, living or dead, would ever come between him and his friend. With this thought, now that he was done whispering into Michael's ear, he laid his arm over Michael's chest, as he continued to lay on his side. Looking over Mike's chest, out into the darkness beyond the window, he then slowly began to doze off as he imagined the day that he would infect his friend. Then, as he pulled his head closer to Michael's sleeping body, he closed his eyes as he took in the sweet smell of his pheromones. With the thought of his own words on his mind, and the dream image that his friend had, Angel imagined to himself getting up the following morning, with Mike, and taking him right up the sandrocks and giving the boy his first flying lesson. Looking further into the future, Angel also imagined going to different areas to harvest. He then even imagined much more further down the road when he might be able to overrun the dungeon that his grandfather ruled. The dungeon that Angel, himself, felt that he could better manage. A dungeon of which him and Michael would have more. No, much more power than Miguel Sanchez would ever have dreamed of having on other lives. Lives that he knew would easily walk right into his grasp and never expect the result of their actions until it was too late. With excitement now running through Angel's veins, it was suddenly real hard for him to fall asleep. Turning his head, facing the ceiling, Angel then placed his ear up against Michael's side to listen to his breathing and heartbeat. In hopes that this may help him to doze off, he just continued to listen as he had also felt the expansion, between his ribs, with each breath. It had seemed that he was only listening to the breathing and heartbeat for perhaps a couple minutes before he found himself staring down a fog-filled corridor. For the first time in his life, Angel was completely and totally afraid of his grandfather. Does he know of my intentions? Angel wondered to himself. Who the hell? Jumping into the air, and turning a complete 180 turn, he found Miguel nearly face to face with him. Do you think that you're fooling around with? Before Angel could pull away from the old man, Miguel had grabbed Angel by both of his forearms, lifting his small body into the air. Stop, Angel cried loudly. Leave me alone. With his words, Angel kicked hard, with his feet, as he knew that his grandfather was capable of killing him, and now, believed that Miguel would. So, you think that you and your friend will run things now, do ya? Let me teach you a couple of things, boy, Miguel continued as he simultaneously held his grandson up off of the floor and squeezed his arms tightly. Keep this in mind. I will kill you and your friend, Michael. I will tear that boy up, piece by piece, right before your eyes. You will see him bleed, you will hear him scream, and I promise you, boy, you will watch and listen and not be able to do a damn thing about it. And then, I'll do it to you. Angel, Michael said just loud enough that it should have woken him up. Wake up, man. Mike was sleeping well up until his friend suddenly screamed. Looking towards Angel, Michael found his friend, in a standing position, floating up off of the mattress, and looking like something was wrong with both of his arms. Something was squeezing both of his arms to the point that his hands were turning purple. Frightened, Mike was daring himself to go get his parents. The floating thing, however, even though Mike was only 5 years old, caused Michael to not trust parental instincts. Though Angel was only wearing boxers, as he still dangled in the air, Michael decided that he would try to pull Angel back down to the bed. With this thought, Michael wrapped his arms around Angel's legs, just below the length of his boxers, as he stood on the mattress, and then supported his head on Angel's abdomen, as he then dropped his entire body weight onto Angel, hoping to pull him down onto the bed. Through the pain that his grandfather was inflicting onto him, Angel had felt a sudden tightening around his upper legs, along with a slight bit of weight against his stomach. He knew that it had to be his friend trying to help. With added insurance, he then looked back into his grandfather's eyes. Now, instead of fear within his face, he had a look of anger that had immediately caused Miguel to start laughing. Instantly, Angel kicked his grandfather in the gut, causing him to lose his grip onto his arms. With it, Angel then fell to the Shortly after Michael hung his entire weight onto Angel's body, both of the two fell to the mattress, waking Angel up. All in about a half-hour's period of time, the boys briefly spoke about what had happened. In the end, Michael promised to not talk about the incident with anyone, and they made plans to talk about it, along with a lot of other stuff, tomorrow at the Sandrocks. After this discussion, both of the boys fell back to sleep.